Hey everyone, and welcome back to Gloomhaven Fantasy Setup, the mod for Tabletop Simulator. In this video, I'm going to be going over all of the new features that have been added to this mod since my original set of tutorial videos were released about a month and a half ago. And there are a lot of really cool, awesome new features that Kajan and Gabriel M have implemented. So many that I thought it made sense to create this little supplemental video that explains all the new stuff. Those guys are really killing it. They're cranking out updates and new features all the time, so often that I would say it's entirely likely that this video is going to be out of date within a few days or at least a week from whenever I post it. Speaking of videos, thank you all so much for watching the videos I've made, and I've received a lot of positive feedback on them. We've gotten quite a lot of views, and I'm really glad that you all are finding them helpful and that they're helping you to stay connected to your friends and your family who you would otherwise be playing Gloomhaven with in person. And that's really why I wanted to make those videos from the get-go, because I think it's really important for us to stay connected during this time and to have an outlet to have fun and relax. And so yeah, I really appreciate you all watching the videos, and I'm glad that you all find them useful. All right, so let's dive right in here. So the first feature that I just noticed before I got started here that wasn't even on my list, I'm pretty sure this wasn't in the mod when I made my original videos, and that is when you add the play area, when you click this add play area button, it used to be that you would have to manually grab the element infusion board and the attack modifier deck for monsters. That stuff's just there now, which is great. You also have all of the status tokens and coins, scenario aid, objective, and summon markers that are all nicely laid out here. Again, I apologize. I'm having a little bit of a hard time remembering what was in the mod for my original set and what wasn't, because there's been so much stuff that's added. Now I'm going to actually go through a list that I wrote out, so hopefully we'll stay on track here. So the first thing, and by the way, I'm going to go through these in order as far as how they were released into the mod. With the exception of some of the notebook stuff, I'm pretty much going to look at all of that together at the end. So the first feature, I think something that's really huge, is there is now monster stats on standees. I love this. I wish there was some way that this could exist in the physical version of Gloomhaven, because I've always found it to be a little laborious to have to go back and look at the monster stat sheet to figure out all the calculations. I know there are apps like Gloomhaven Helper that make that a little bit easier, but at least in this environment, it's really nice to be able to just look at the base stats, and then to also be able to look at the actions that are happening in the initiative tracker here. I can actually show you exactly what that looks like. Let me add some players, and I'll put some cards out here and get some initiative on the board. Let me make myself the game master so I can see everything. And let's get the battle interface up, and let's start the round. So you can see it's really nice that I can just look at these base stats and then go over here and look at what actions are happening over the initiative tracker, and just be able to immediately have actions happen without having to refer back to the stat sheet. So that's great. Another thing is the grid setup is now automatic. It used to be that when you set up a match is not the right word, when you set up a game in Gloomhaven, you would have to go over to the options menu here and go down to grid and make sure that the hex orientation was correct for the given scenario that you were using. It now sets that up automatically, so you don't have to play around with this at all. As long as you are using the game setup window. If you're setting up a scenario manually for either a random dungeon or one of the community campaigns or any of the Forgotten Circles stuff, which currently doesn't have any setup scripting, you would still need to go in and make sure the grid settings are correct. But for anything that's being automated, as far as the setup is concerned, you do not have to do that anymore, which is nice. A few other small things. So now the shop layout up here goes from bottom to top instead of top to bottom. What was happening as you started to get more and more items, they started bleeding into the play area. Now they just go up. I imagine at a certain point it's going to start to hit the edge of the lighting. Mine, I think I'm only at like Prosperity 4 in my game, so we still have quite a lot of room. Maybe someday I'll lay them all out and see just how far out they get, but that's a great ad. Miniature boxes. This is a small thing, but you may have already noticed when I was adding these characters earlier that rather than the little envelopes, we now have the little character boxes that are very similar to the character boxes, if not identical, actually, to the character boxes that come in the physical version of the game. So that's nice. You'll also notice that, at least for the 6 starting characters, we now have painted minis, which is excellent. I think you can actually, yeah, you can go back to the unpainted version by changing the state if you want, but that's nice. Maybe someday we'll get painted minis for the unlockable classes as well, but that's a bit of a tall order. Maybe someone else can do it because Kajan and Gabriel do a lot. I'm pretty sure these painted minis actually came from another mod. I forget who made it. So thanks to that person, whoever the person is that made these painted minis and brought them into this game. Thank you for that. There are new items and updates for Envelope X, which I haven't even unlocked. I don't know what's in Envelope X, but for those of you that use Envelope X, then you probably want to remove the version of it that you're currently working with and grab the updated version, which of course lives in the Gloomhaven box here, in the sealed envelope. Maybe once I unlock Envelope X, I'm actually pretty close to doing it. I'll make a separate video about that stuff. But this, as with all of the videos I've been making, is going to try to avoid spoilers as much as possible. They added community campaigns now. So if you look in the box, you can see this little bag, and it contains Into the Unknown, Capital Intrigue, and The Infinite Beyond. It doesn't include Blacksmith in the Bear, because that is still in progress. However, that is available in the Frosthaven mod. So if you want to play that, you can use the Frosthaven mod, which is basically identical to this mod in terms of how it functions, as far as I know. I haven't spent too much time with it, but it's definitely very much based on this mod. So that's great. So they added a whole bunch of new auto setup features, which are really fantastic. So let me actually clear this out. Let's go into game setup and we'll delete the map. And we'll go to monster setup. We'll delete the monsters. And let's actually spawn in scenario 1. So in addition to all the normal setup stuff that this does, as far as putting out the monsters, putting out the map tiles, now it also deals the battle goal cards to you automatically. It will put them into the hands of every player, which is great. So you don't have to do that automatically. There's some new auto looting stuff that has been added, which is phenomenal. So now, if I kill a monster, and there's now this, I can't remember if this was here before or not, but there's this gray button here that says defeat, and that spawns a coin. And if I put my brute on that coin, when I mark my brute's turn as complete by clicking on them in the initiative tracker, it automatically loots that coin and moves it down here to the player card, whatever this thing is called. Player mat, I think, is the official name. So that's fantastic. You no longer have to manually grab those coins. However, the coins are also no longer sticky items, so you can move them manually if you want to. If you forgot to do this, or your character wasn't in the right place when you ended the round, it's still very possible to override it, which is nice. It does some automation with bless and curse cards now too. So if I add a bless card to this deck, we'll just cheat and put it right on top. Let's end this round, and let's draw an attack modifier for, let's start a new round and draw an attack modifier for character 2 here. When I end the round, automatically puts that bless card right back in the bless pile. Same thing is true with curses, so you no longer have to worry about those getting shuffled back into your deck, as long as you are hitting the end round buttons and using all of these draw buttons that are here. It nicely automates that process, so that's fantastic. Let's see, some other stuff. There's some scripting that has happened with some of the scripting buttons, which is hard for me to replicate right now because by default they are set to the numpad on the keyboard, and I don't actually have a numpad, but you can, just to simulate them. I believe 1 and 2 will... Oh, actually, it's working. Maybe I rebound these and I forgot. Yeah. Hovering over a card and pressing 1 or 2 will put them in the first and second slots here automatically, so you don't have to drag them. So that's nice. Scripting button 3 will automatically draw the monster attack modifier, which is excellent as well. And scripting buttons 7, 8, and 9 allow you to change the tabletop background here. So you can have it just be that blank green with the Gloomhaven art there in green, or the Gloomhaven art in red, which I think is kind of ominous looking, but I like it. So those are great. Other new features, the camera control panel has been added. So you can jump back and forth between the scenario, the play area, and then players 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can, of course, use Tabletop Simulator's built-in camera controls to make your own presets as well, but it's nice to have this built into the interface. Moving along. They redid the party sheet, which looking at it, I'm pretty sure the main thing they changed is just the fact that the text fields here highlight, so it's a little bit more obvious that they exist and when you are typing in them, so you're not accidentally typing over or otherwise deleting content from those sheets. So that's a nice little add. Okay, so let's talk about the end of scenario automation. And this is a huge feature that's been added to the game, and it's really fantastic. I'm going to add just a few things to sort of give you the full effect here. I've already given some gold to our spell weaver, and I've given everybody a bit of XP as well. Let's do a few other things, like let's drop some HP on our characters. And let's give a few items to folks. Let's give an invisibility cloak to our spellweaver, and let's pretend they used it. And let's give a let's do the boots of striding and give that to our brute. And let's say that at the end of the scenario they had tapped it to use it. So let's open up our game setup window here. And by the way, this is scenario level 1, which means that when you successfully complete the scenario, everybody gets 6 bonus XP. So you can see here there are buttons for scenario 1 and scenario lost. And when you hit these buttons, it's going to do a number of really excellent things for you automatically. And they include, it's going to add the gold and XP that you have accumulated down to your party sheet, to your character sheets automatically. And if you click scenario 1, it's going to add that bonus XP as well. And the amount of bonus XP that it's going to add is going to be based on the number that is defined right here. So based on what your scenario level is set to. It's going to automatically delete any of these loot tokens that you have here on your character mats. It's going to automatically reset everybody's HP and XP. It's going to return all lost and discarded cards back to your hand. So let's actually add a few things here just to illustrate that when we do it in just a sec. It's going to remove all bless, curse, and -1 cards that are still in there. So let's add a bless card there. Oops. And a curse card here. And let's add a curse card to the monster deck just for good measure as well. It's going to untap and turn over any items that are in the slots here. And it's going to automatically move our character standees back to our character mats, which is great because there was always this lingering possibility before that you might accidentally delete your standees when you were clearing out the map here. So it's nice that it automates that process. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and click scenario 1. And boom. It's done all of that work. The XP and gold have been added to my character sheets. My HP and XP dials are cleared out and set back to their defaults. My items are back to where they were. My attack modifier decks are back to their normal settings, and the bless and curse cards have all been added back to their deck, except I screwed up here because I added a player curse card to my monster attack modifier deck instead of one of the monster curse cards. So that is why that did not happen properly. So be aware of that small detail. let's find that and move it back manually. That's an easy mistake to make. So you have to play by the rules in order for this to work properly, I guess is what we've learned from that. The couple of things that it doesn't do automatically for you, it doesn't automatically put your battle goal cards back, which normally you would only have one of because you're supposed to discard one of these when you start the scenario. So you still have to manually add those back to the battle goal deck, which is nice because that's going to be a reminder for you to add, any check marks that you gained. So really, really cool stuff. It really this is a strong mark in the column of this version of Gloomhaven being easier to play in a lot of ways than the physical version. Again, not knocking that version at all, and I will certainly continue to play that version with real human beings at some point in the future. But while we have these features, it's really nice to be able to take advantage of them, and it allows us to just move through the process of breaking down and moving from scenario to scenario so much faster. I still like to double check all of the gold and XP myself before I hit that scenario 1 or scenario lost button, because you never know. There could always be a scripting error. There could be something that you did wrong that screwed it up. Maybe you set your scenario level incorrectly or something. So I always like to get out a piece of paper and a pen and a calculator and just double check all the math there to make sure that it's working properly. But so far, I've had zero problems with it. So far, it works perfectly. So big props to Gabriel M and Kajan for that update, because it's huge and it works really, really well from my experience at least. Okay, a few more features to look at here. As you may have already noticed, they have added some updates here to the character sheets. They've first and foremost made the fonts a little bit different. The numbers are much larger, and you can now manually type in values in here, which is a big time saver. The ability to add and subtract in groups of 10 by right-clicking on these plus and minus buttons has actually been removed, but you don't really need to do that since you can just type in the values manually here. They've also added a notes field, an actual text field here under notes where you can add notes. And what's really cool is if you flip these sheets over, there is a notes field that no other players can see. In fact, even the game master can't see it. You'll notice that as the game master, I can't actually interact with that field. I would have to go and change my color back to player 1 here, and only then can I actually interact with that text field. So if you want to keep notes that are completely hidden from every other player, you can now do that within the mod itself here. So that's awesome. Let's see. As of literally yesterday, there is a couple of updates that have been made to these sheets. Apparently there was a bug where they weren't saving data properly. So I'm not sure if that means that you actually need to recreate these or not, or if that bug was addressed some other way. But that sort of leads me to a general thing that I wanted to address as far as how these updates impact updating from one version of the mod to the other. you may have seen the whole video that I did on that process of updating from one version of the mod to the other. And if you haven't seen that video and you have questions about it in general, you should go check that out. It should be in the same playlist. But a number of these updates have made changes to the way fundamental pieces of the game work and what is now scripted and what is not scripted. Particularly the way that all of the automatic removal of bless and curse cards work, and -1 cards and all of that stuff operates, means that pretty much all of the attack modifiers, if not all of the attack modifier cards, are now scripted. So if you want those features to work properly, you can't reuse versions of your characters that have old attack modifiers in new versions of the mod. So that, coupled with the fact that we have new character sheets and new tuck boxes, and all these small little aesthetic changes, I would say that at this point, if you are updating from a version of the mod that is a month old, or even older than that, it makes a lot of sense to just completely rebuild your characters at this point. So if you're doing that, just make a note, take screenshots of all of the items you have, all of the character ability cards that you've added, all of the items that you have, all of the changes you've made to attack modifier decks, adding extra cards here as you're leveling up and adding perks. Obviously, all of the stuff that is on your character sheet, make sure you capture that information, and then just add, just grab a new version of that class, and bring it over. That is true for all of the classes. So, in addition to the individual characters that you may have active that you may want to rebuild, you're also not going to want to bring over the infinity boxes, because all of those infinity boxes have new versions of the character information, including those new character sheets, the new character boxes that are in here, and most importantly, all of the new scripted attack modifiers. So make sure that when you are moving from one version of the mod to the other, the first time you're doing this, that you don't bring over any old versions of these infinity boxes, and that's true for the unlockable classes as well. I realize that could be a little bit of a pain, especially if you have added a lot of enhancements to these infinity boxes. That's a process that I talk about in one of my overview videos. So just try and keep track of where you've added those enhancements, and you may need to manually re-add them back here if you do have any. I would say I'm not 100% sure if there's scripting that's been added to the Bless, Curse, and -1 cards. I assume that there is. So if you're moving from an older version of the mod, you probably don't want to overwrite the new versions of these with older ones too. Just because, again, a lot of that scripting probably won't work right if you were to do that. So long story short, just be very careful when you're moving from one version of the mod to another right now, and make sure you're not bringing in any old stuff that's going to override new stuff that you need for all this automation to work properly. Really, what it mostly has to do with is the attack modifier stuff. That's the big stuff. Everything else is pretty optional. The boxes and the character sheets are mostly aesthetic. But also, I'm not a scripter. I'm not a programmer, so I haven't looked at the code and seen exactly what relates to what. So it's entirely possible that I'm wrong. So that's why I'm saying probably just makes sense for you to completely rebuild your characters at this point if you are moving from an update where all of that attack modifier scripting was not yet in place. One last thing before we look at the notebook, they also added this real cool thing now. When you click on a door, you get a little confirmation. It says open. So if you accidentally click that door button, it's not going to just immediately populate the room. I guess you could still accidentally click on it twice, but try and pay attention, will you? So that's cool. Finally, let's look at the notebook. So there's a bunch of stuff that they've added in here, and I don't think I really went through any of this stuff in any of my other videos anyway, so it's worth looking at. So a number of cool things you can do here. You can specify whether or not the round tracker counts up or down and whether or not it moves. That's this little guy here. And that is something you need to do in certain scenarios. Sometimes it's just nice to know how many rounds you've had as well. So I like to usually keep this on no matter what, although obviously it's only useful if you're counting up to 12 or down from 12. Start round options. Flip revealed, yes or no. That's nice if you are playing solo and you don't want to have to, take the trouble to make sure your cards are facing down when you click that start round button so that they flip and face up. They can just be facing up the entire time. So that's nice. You can specify a few options here, like you can tell it not to deal you battle goals automatically if you don't want to. You can specify how scenario pages work now. So in spawn mode, it will basically do what it used to do, where it would put a page from the scenario book right here on the table. In change mode, it will actually, if you have the scenario book that is in the main box here, if you have that on the table when you create the scenario, it will automatically flip to the appropriate page, which is the default now. Or you can do none, where it will do neither of those things. 3D models, I haven't played with this yet because it's a brand new feature, and I don't think it's available for all of the traps and obstacles and so forth, but that's a feature I think they're adding in. I think it's only supported in the first 10 scenarios right now, but that's cool as well. Broadcast options. This is, I think, a new feature that they added at some point recently, where now when you change the XP or HP for someone, at least the HP, I don't know if it does it for the XP. Brute's already dead. It does. So it broadcasts that information. And you can specify here whether or not you want that on or off, and whether or not it's doing it for characters and monsters, or just characters, or just monsters. I'd say it's really useful to have that stuff on for everybody, so I'm not sure why you would even want to turn it off, but there you go. I think I skipped something up here. You can specify whether or not the setup tool is using its old options or the new options here. I think the new stuff is way better, so I think in general you should keep that set to new. Win-lose options, you can specify whether or not you are doing the solo/open information mode. If you're not familiar with that mode, it actually explains very clearly what it is down here. When you're playing in solo mode or with open information, you are supposed to get less XP and less gold to sort of compensate for the fact that you have an advantage because you know exactly which what cards are going to be played by each character during the scenario. All right, so I am pretty sure that is everything, or at least everything that I had planned to talk about. So, again, thanks for watching. I hope you find this useful, and if I did miss anything, please let me know in the comments. And like I said, maybe I'll keep making these if they keep adding, new and useful features to this mod, which it seems like they will continue to do based on the track record so far. So I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.